A dramatic snowstorm at night in a small rural town. A lone man wearing a heavy winter coat and gloves stands beside his old pickup truck, which is parked on a deserted road surrounded by tall pine trees covered in snow. In the distance, a faint silhouette of a woman in a dark coat stumbles through the blizzard, barely visible against the swirling white snow. The scene is illuminated by the dim headlights of the truck, casting soft yellow light onto the icy road. The atmosphere feels cold, tense, and mysterious. Ethan Carter tightened his grip on the steering wheel as he squinted through the windshield. The snowstorm had rolled in faster than anyone expected, turning the quiet roads of Maplewood into a chaotic mess of swirling flakes and icy winds. His old blue pickup truck groaned as it crawled along the deserted highway, its tires crunching over uneven patches of ice. The wipers slapped back and forth furiously, but they were no match for the relentless storm. Visibility was almost zero. Ethan sighed, leaning forward slightly to peer ahead. He'd been working late at the garage that evening, fixing a busted radiator for one of the local farmers. It wasn't unusual for him to stay overtime. His schedule was flexible, and he didn't mind putting in extra hours if it meant helping someone out. But now, stuck in this freezing weather, he couldn't help but wish he'd left just a little earlier. As he rounded a bend in the road, something caught his eye, a dark shape moving awkwardly near the edge of the forest. At first, Ethan thought it might be a deer or some other animal caught in the storm. But then he saw it again more clearly this time. It wasn't an animal at all. It was a person, staggering through the knee-deep snow, their figure barely visible under the thick layers of falling flakes. Ethan's heart sank. Who would be out here in this kind of weather? And why were they walking alone on such a dangerous stretch of road? Without hesitation, he eased his foot off the gas and pulled the truck onto the shoulder. The tires crunched against the frozen ground as he brought the vehicle to a stop. For a moment he sat there staring at the figure through the haze of snow. Then, shaking his head, he muttered to himself, "You can't just leave them out here." He grabbed his heavy wool coat from the passenger seat and shrugged it on before stepping out into the biting cold. The wind hit him like a wall, stealing his breath and sending shivers down his spine. Pulling the collar up around his neck, Ethan trudged toward the stranger, his boots sinking into the deep snow with each step. As he got closer, he realized it was a woman. She wore a long black coat that flapped uselessly in the wind, offering little protection from the elements. Her hair was plastered to her face, damp from the melting snow, and her cheeks were flushed red from the cold. She stumbled forward, arms wrapped tightly around herself as though trying to hold herself together. "Hey!" Ethan called out, raising his voice above the howling wind. "Are you okay?" The woman turned her head slowly, her eyes wide with confusion, or maybe fear. When she spoke, her voice was weak and trembling. I don't know where I am," she admitted, her words barely audible over the storm. "My car broke down miles back. I've been walking for hours." Ethan nodded, not needing any more explanation. He stepped closer and gently placed a hand on her arm to steady her. "Come on," he said firmly. "You can't stay out here. You'll freeze to death." She hesitated for a moment, as though unsure whether to trust him, but the look of genuine concern in his eyes must have reassured her, because she finally nodded and allowed him to lead her back to the truck. Once inside, Ethan cranked up the heat and handed her a spare blanket he kept in the back seat. She wrapped it around herself gratefully, huddling close to the vent blowing warm air. Her lips were chapped and pale, and her hands shook uncontrollably as she clutched the edges of the blanket. "What's your name?" Ethan asked softly, trying to keep his tone friendly despite the tension of the situation. "Lily," she replied after a pause. "Lily Harper." "Well, Lily Harper, my name's Ethan Carter, and right now we need to get you somewhere safe." She nodded weakly, still too exhausted to say much. Ethan glanced at her sideways as he pulled back onto the road. There was something about her, something he couldn't quite put his finger on. She looked tired, yes, but there was also a certain elegance to her even in her disheveled state. Still, he pushed those thoughts aside. Whatever her story was, it could wait until they were out of this storm. A cozy, dimly lit apartment above a garage on a snowy night. The room is small but warm, with a crackling fireplace casting flickering orange light across worn furniture. A steaming mug of tea sits on a wooden coffee table next to an open book. In the background, frost-covered windows show swirling snow outside. A man in casual clothes stands near the fire, glancing at a woman wrapped in a thick blanket sitting on the couch. Her expression is calm but distant, as if lost in thought. Ethan's apartment was nothing fancy, but it was warm and dry, a stark contrast to the freezing chaos outside. He lived above the garage where he worked, a modest space filled with mismatched furniture and the faint smell of motor oil that always seemed to linger no matter how much he aired it out. Tonight, however, none of that mattered. All that mattered was getting Lily comfortable and safe from the storm. Once inside, Ethan guided her to the couch by the fireplace. The flames danced lazily, casting soft shadows on the walls and filling the room with a comforting warmth. He handed her another blanket, thicker this time, and fetched a cup of hot tea from the kitchen. "Here," he said, placing the steaming mug into her trembling hands. "This should help." Lily nodded gratefully, wrapping her fingers around the mug. She took a cautious sip, letting the heat spread through her body. For the first time since he'd found her, she seemed to relax just a little. Her shoulders dropped slightly, and the tension in her face eased. "You're lucky I came along." "When I did," Ethan said, breaking the silence. He sat down in a chair across from her, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. "Out there alone in that storm, you could have gotten hypothermia." Lily glanced at him, her eyes still, clouded with exhaustion. "I know," she admitted quietly. "Thank you. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't stopped." Ethan shrugged, brushing off her gratitude like it was no big deal. Anyone else would have done the same. But even as he said it, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was something unusual about her. It wasn't just her appearance, though she looked completely out of place in his humble home, or the fact that she'd been wandering alone in such terrible conditions. There was something in the way she carried herself, a quiet confidence that didn't quite match her current situation. They sat in silence for a while, the only sounds coming from the crackling fire and the occasional gust of wind rattling the windows. Finally, Ethan decided to break the ice. "So what were you doing out there?" he asked casually. "Maplewood isn't exactly on the way to anywhere." Lily hesitated, staring into her tea as though searching for the right words. "I needed some time away," she said after a moment. "From everything. I thought driving up here would give me a chance to clear my head." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "And you ended up walking in the middle of a blizzard?" She gave a small, humorless laugh. "Yeah, well, things didn't go exactly as planned. My car broke down miles back and I had no signal on my phone. I figured I'd try to make it to town, but..." She trailed off, shaking her head. Ethan nodded slowly, processing her explanation. Something about it felt incomplete, but he didn't push. Instead, he changed the subject. "Do you like reading?" he asked, nodding toward the stack of books on the coffee table. Lily followed his gaze and smiled faintly. "I do. I used to. Read all the time when I was younger. These days, though, it's harder to find the time." "Tell me about it," Ethan replied with a chuckle. "Between work and keeping this place together, I barely have time to sleep, let alone read. But every now and then I manage to sneak in a chapter or two." He picked up one of the books, a tattered copy of To Kill a Mockingbird, and held it up. "Ever read this one?" Lily's smile widened, genuine this time. "Yes, actually. It's one of my favorites." "Oh, yeah?" Ethan grinned, clearly pleased. "What did you think of Atticus Finch?" "Some people say he's too idealistic, but I think he's exactly the kind of person we need more of in the world." The conversation flowed naturally after that, shifting from books to movies to childhood memories. As they talked, Ethan noticed how Lily's demeanor softened. She laughed at his jokes, shared stories about growing up in a bustling city, and even teased him about his outdated record player. For a while, it felt like they were old friends catching up rather than two strangers brought together by chance. But despite their growing rapport, Ethan couldn't ignore the lingering sense that Lily was holding back. Every so often, her gaze would drift toward the window, as if she were waiting for something or someone. And though she smiled and laughed along with him, there was a shadow behind her eyes, a sadness he couldn't quite name. When the clock struck midnight, Ethan realized they'd been talking for hours. "Wow," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "I didn't mean to keep you up this late. You must be exhausted." Lily blinked as though snapping out of a trance. "You're right," she said, setting her empty mug on the table. I'm tired. Thank you again for everything." "No problem," Ethan replied, standing up. "There's a spare bedroom down the hall. You see a man sitting at a wooden desk in a dimly lit room, illuminated by the glow of a laptop screen. The screen displays an online news article with a large photo of a woman in professional attire, smiling confidently. The man's expression is one of shock and disbelief as he leans closer to the screen, his hand frozen mid-reach toward a cup of coffee. In the background, a window shows a snowy night outside, with frost creeping along the edges of the glass. The next morning, Ethan woke up earlier than usual. The storm had passed during the night, leaving behind a pristine blanket of snow that sparkled under the pale sunlight. He shuffled into the kitchen, still groggy from the late-night conversation with Lily, and started a pot of coffee. As the rich aroma filled the air, he glanced down the hallway toward the spare bedroom where she was sleeping. He didn't know what to make of her. She seemed so different, not just because of the circumstances under which they'd met, but because of the way she carried herself. There was a quiet elegance about her, a sense of purpose that didn't quite fit with the story she'd told him. But Ethan wasn't one to pry. If she wanted to share more, she would. While waiting for the coffee to brew, Ethan decided to check the local news online. Power outages and road closures were common after storms like this, and he wanted to see if anything major had happened nearby. He opened his laptop, sipping his first cup of coffee as the homepage loaded. That's when he saw it. A headline that made his stomach drop. "Billionaire philanthropist Lily Harper missing after traveling incognito." Ethan froze, his mug halfway to his lips. His eyes darted to the accompanying photo, a striking image of a woman dressed in a sleek suit, her hair styled perfectly, her smile confident and radiant. It was unmistakably her, the same woman who had been shivering on the side of the road just hours ago. His mind raced as he clicked on the article. According to the report, Lily Harper was the founder and CEO of Harper Innovations, a cutting-edge technology company known for its groundbreaking work in renewable energy. She had recently stepped away from the public eye to focus on personal projects, traveling incognito to avoid attention. Her disappearance during the storm had sparked concern among her staff and family, though authorities believed she might simply be lying low somewhere safe. Ethan read the article twice, his heart pounding. How could someone like her, a billionaire, a genius, a household name, end up stranded in Maplewood? And why hadn't she said anything? Sure, she'd mentioned needing time away, but nothing about being some kind of global powerhouse. Before he could process everything, he heard footsteps behind him. Turning quickly, he saw Lily standing in the doorway, wearing the oversized sweater he'd lent her the night before. Her damp hair hung loose around her shoulders and her face was free of makeup, making her look younger and even more vulnerable than she had the night before. "Morning," she said softly, her voice still thick with sleep. "Smells good in here." Ethan forced a smile, closing the laptop lid casually. "Coffee's almost ready, help yourself." She nodded and moved toward the counter, pouring herself a cup. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Ethan watched her carefully, trying to reconcile the woman in front of him with the polished figure in the article. Finally, unable to hold back any longer, he cleared his throat. "So," he began, his tone light but probing. "You ever think about going into tech or something? You seem like you've got your life pretty figured out." Lily paused, her back to him as she stirred sugar into her coffee. There was a long silence before she turned around, meeting his gaze directly. "Why do you ask?" Ethan shrugged, leaning against the table. Just curious. You've got this vibe, I guess. Like you're used to solving problems bigger than busted cars or snowstorms. To his surprise, Lily laughed. Not the polite chuckle she'd given him the night before, but a genuine, amused laugh. You're sharper than you let on, aren't you? I try, Ethan replied with a grin. But seriously, there's something about you. I can't put my finger on it, but I get the feeling you're not exactly ordinary. Lily studied him for a moment, her expression unreadable. Then, with a deep breath, she set her mug down and walked over to the couch. Sitting down, she gestured for him to join her. When he did, she folded her hands in her lap and looked at him steadily. You're right, she admitted. I'm not who I said I was last night. My name is Lily Harper, but I left out a few details. Ethan raised an eyebrow, intrigued but cautious. Like what? Like the fact that I run a multi-billion-dollar company, she said bluntly, and that I've spent the past decade developing technologies that could change the world. Ethan blinked, stunned. Okay, he said slowly. That's a lot to take in. I know, Lily replied, her tone softening. And I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner, but I needed to be sure I could trust you. Trust me? Ethan echoed, confused. With what? Lily hesitated, glancing toward the window. Outside, the sun was beginning to rise, casting golden light over the snow-covered rooftops. Let's just say I've learned the hard way that not everyone has good intentions. People see dollar signs when they hear my name. They don't care about the work I do, or the person I am. Ethan frowned, leaning forward. That's not me, Lily. I stopped for you because you needed help, not because of who you are or how much money you have. She smiled faintly, her eyes searching his face. I know. That's why I'm telling you now. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The weight of her revelation hung in the air between them, heavy and unspoken. Finally, Ethan broke the silence. So, what happens next? He asked. Are you going to call someone? Head back to wherever you came from? Lily shook her head. Not yet. This storm gave me a chance to step back and think, to remember what really matters. Meeting you reminded me that kindness still exists, even in a world that often feels cold and calculating. Ethan felt a lump rise in his throat. He didn't know what to say, so instead he offered her a small smile. Well, I'm glad I could help. Even if it turns out you're basically a superhero. This time, Lily laughed again, the sound warm and genuine. Hardly a superhero, she said, but maybe we can both learn something from each other while I'm here. As the morning sunlight streamed through the frosty windows, Ethan realized that his life, and perhaps the lives of everyone in Maplewood, was about to change in ways he couldn't yet imagine. A cozy living room bathed in soft morning light, with snow-covered trees visible through the frosty windows. A man and a woman sit on opposite ends of a worn couch, engaged in quiet conversation. The man looks thoughtful, his hands clasped together, while the woman speaks earnestly, her expression calm but serious. On the coffee table between them sits a steaming mug of tea and a sleek smartphone displaying a high-tech interface with glowing icons. The atmosphere feels intimate yet charged with anticipation. Over the next few days, Ethan found himself learning more about Lily and the world she came from than he ever imagined possible. She didn't shy away from answering his questions, though she was careful not to overwhelm him with details. Slowly, she revealed pieces of her life. How she had inherited Harper Innovations after her father's passing, how she dedicated herself to creating technologies that could help fight climate change, and how isolating it felt to be constantly scrutinized by the media and those who only cared about her wealth. Despite everything, Ethan treated her the same as he had before he knew her true identity. He didn't fawn over her or ask for favors. Instead, he listened when she spoke, shared stories from his own life, and even joked around like they were old friends. To Lily, this simplicity was refreshing, a rare reminder of what it meant to connect with someone without ulterior motives. But, as much as Ethan tried to act normal, he couldn't ignore the growing curiosity gnawing at him. What did someone like Lily Harper see in a place like Maplewood? And why had she chosen him to confide in? One afternoon, as they sat together in the living room, Lily decided to test him further. She pulled out her phone, a sleek device unlike anything Ethan had ever seen, and tapped a few times on the screen. Suddenly, holographic images sprang to life above the coffee table, showing blueprints and schematics of machines Ethan couldn't begin to understand. "This," Lily said, pointing to one of the designs, "is something my team has been working on. It's a compact energy generator capable of powering entire neighborhoods using nothing but renewable resources." Ethan stared at the floating diagrams, his brow furrowed. "That sounds incredible, but also kind of impossible." "It's, not impossible," Lily replied with a smile. "We've already built prototypes. They're being tested in a few cities right now. If everything goes well, we'll start rolling them out globally within the next year." Ethan leaned back, shaking his head in disbelief. "So you're telling me you've basically invented a way to save the planet?" Lily laughed softly. "Not single-handedly, no, but I'm part of the effort. And honestly, that's why I wanted to come here, to get away from all the noise and figure out how to make this technology accessible to smaller communities like Maplewood." Ethan frowned, his curiosity deepening. "Why Maplewood specifically?" She hesitated, glancing toward the window where sunlight filtered through the frosted glass. "Because places like this are often overlooked. Big corporations focus on major cities, leaving towns like yours struggling to keep up. I wanted to see if there was a way to bring these innovations direct." A small town square blanketed in fresh snow, with quaint brick buildings and lampposts glowing softly under the pale winter sunlight. In the center of the square stands a man in a heavy coat next to a woman in an elegant woolen scarf, both gazing at a futuristic device mounted on a pedestal. The device emits a faint blue light, illuminating their faces with wonder. Surrounding them are townspeople bundled in warm clothes, looking on with expressions of awe and curiosity. Snowflakes drift lazily from the sky, adding to the serene atmosphere. The decision didn't come easily to Ethan. For days he wrestled with the idea of accepting Lily's offer. On one hand, her technology could change Maplewood forever, lowering energy costs, creating jobs, and giving the town a fighting chance against the harsh winters that often left people struggling. On the other hand, he couldn't shake the feeling that taking such a gift would upend his quiet, predictable life. He wasn't sure if he was ready for the spotlight or the responsibility that came with it. Lily gave him space to think, respecting his need for time. She spent her days exploring Maplewood, observing the daily rhythms of the town and getting a sense of its people. Though she kept a low profile, word eventually spread about the mysterious stranger staying with Ethan Carter. Whispers filled the diner and the grocery store, but no one dared approach her directly. There was something about her demeanor, a quiet confidence that made people hesitate. Finally, after nearly a week of deliberation, Ethan made up his mind. He found Lily sitting by the fireplace in his apartment, sketching designs in a notebook. Her brow was furrowed in concentration, and the glow of the flames highlighted the sharp angles of her face. Clearing his throat to get her attention, he stepped closer. "I've thought about it," he said, his voice steady despite the nerves bubbling inside him. "And I want to help." Lily looked up, her expression softening. "Are you sure?" Ethan nodded. "Yeah. But there's one condition. This isn't just for me, it's for everyone in Maplewood. If we're going to do this, we have to make sure it benefits the whole town, not just a few people." Lily smiled, closing her notebook. "That's exactly what I hoped you'd say." Over the next several weeks, Ethan and Lily worked together to bring her vision to life. They started by meeting with local leaders, the mayor, business owners, and community organizers, to explain the project. At first, many were skeptical. A billionaire showing up out of nowhere with promises of free energy sounded too good to be true. But as Lily laid out her plans, showing them prototypes, data, and projections, they began to see the potential. Ethan acted as the bridge between Lily and the townspeople. While she spoke in technical terms about renewable energy and sustainable infrastructure, He translated her ideas into language everyone could understand. He reminded them of the struggles they faced: rising utility bills, outdated systems, and the constant battle against the cold, and explained how Lily's technology could ease those burdens. Slowly but surely, the town warmed to the idea. Work crews arrived from Harper Innovations to install the first energy generator in the town square. The sleek device hummed quietly, its surface shimmering with a faint blue light. When it was switched on for the first time, a collective gasp rippled through the crowd gathered to watch. Lights flickered on in nearby buildings powered entirely by the clean, renewable energy flowing from the machine. For Ethan, seeing the joy on his neighbors' faces was worth every moment of doubt. Parents talked excitedly about lower heating bills during the winter months. Business owners dreamed of expanding their shops without worrying about skyrocketing electricity costs. Even the kids seemed thrilled, pointing at the glowing generator, like it was some kind of magic. But the changes went beyond practical improvements. Something shifted in the spirit of Maplewood. People who had once kept to themselves now gathered in the square to admire the new technology or share stories about how it was already making a difference. Neighbors helped each other prepare for the installation process, volunteering their time and resources to ensure everything ran smoothly. The town felt alive in a way it hadn't in years. Through it all, Ethan and Lily grew closer. Their partnership blossomed into a friendship built on mutual respect and shared goals. Ethan admired Lily's determination and creativity, while Lily appreciated Ethan's humility and deep connection to his community. Together, they proved that even the most unlikely alliances could achieve extraordinary things. One evening, as they stood side by side watching the sunset over the transformed town square, Lily turned to Ethan with a thoughtful expression. "You?" "No," she said. "When I came here, I wasn't sure what I'd find. But meeting you, and seeing how much this place means to you, it's reminded me why I do what I do." Ethan chuckled, shoving his hands into his pockets. "Well, don't go getting all sentimental on me. We've still got a lot of work to do." Lily laughed, nudging him playfully. "Don't worry, I'm not going anywhere anytime soon." As the last rays of sunlight faded behind the horizon, casting the snowy landscape in shades of lavender and gray, Ethan realized that Maplewood was no longer just his home. It was a symbol of hope. And thanks to Lily's generosity and his own willingness to step outside his comfort zone, the future looked brighter than ever. A small-town mechanic's garage at dusk, illuminated by warm overhead lights. A man in a grease-stained jacket stands near an old pickup truck deep in thought, while news reporters and camera crews gather outside the garage doors. Snow blankets the ground, and a glowing energy generator can be seen in the distance, its faint blue light contrasting with the orange hues of the setting sun. The atmosphere is tense yet hopeful, as the man contemplates his next steps. As word of Maplewood's transformation spread beyond the town borders, attention began to pour in from all directions. News outlets picked up the story, calling it a miracle in the making. Reporters flocked to the small town, eager to interview Ethan Carter, the local mechanic who had partnered with billionaire Lily Harper to bring revolutionary technology to his struggling community. At first, Ethan tried to avoid the spotlight, letting Lily handle most of the media inquiries. But as the days went on, it became clear that he couldn't stay out of the public eye forever. One evening, after a long day of interviews and meetings, Ethan found himself back at the garage where it all began. The familiar scent of oil and metal greeted him as he leaned against his workbench, staring blankly at the tools scattered across the surface. His mind was racing, replaying snippets of conversations he'd had earlier that day. "Do you think this will change your life?" one reporter had asked. "What's it like working with someone as powerful as Lily Harper?" another pressed. Ethan sighed, rubbing his temples. He hadn't signed up for any of this. All he'd wanted was to help his neighbors, to make their lives a little easier during the brutal winters. Now he felt like he was standing on the edge of something much bigger than himself, and he wasn't sure if he was ready for it. Kier, sound of footsteps broke his train of thought. Turning, he saw Lily walking toward him, her breath visible in the chilly air. She wore a simple coat, her usual elegance softened by the casual setting. Her expression was calm but concerned. "You, okay?" she asked, stopping a few feet away. Ethan shrugged, forcing a smile. "Just thinking." "About what?" He hesitated, glancing toward the door where reporters lingered, their cameras flashing intermittently. "All this," he admitted, gesturing vaguely. "I never expected things to get so big. I mean, we were just trying to help the town, right? Not turn it into some kind of national headline." Lily nodded, understanding his unease. "It's a lot to take in. Trust me, I know what it's like to have everyone watching your every move, but you're handling it better than most people would." "That's because I'm used to staying in the background," Ethan replied. "Fixing cars, helping out when I can. That's my thing. This," he trailed off, shaking his head. "This feels like someone else's story." Lily stepped closer, her tone gentle but firm. "Maybe it is someone else's story, but only if you let it be. What you've done here, Ethan, what we've done together, is proof that ordinary people can create extraordinary change. You didn't ask for fame or recognition. You did this because it was the right thing to do. Don't lose sight of that." Her words struck a chord, and Ethan felt some of the tension ease from his shoulders. She was right. No matter how overwhelming things got, the heart of the project remained the same: helping others. That was something he could hold on to. Still, the pressure mounted as more visitors arrived in Maplewood. Scientists, engineers, and government officials came to inspect the energy generator, marveling at its efficiency and potential. Local businesses saw a surge in customers, and even tourists started showing up, curious to see the town of the future. While many residents welcomed the newfound attention, others worried about how it might change the character of their close-knit community. Ethan shared those concerns. One afternoon, he met with a group of neighbors at the diner to discuss the growing influx of outsiders. The mood was mixed, some excited about the opportunities, others wary of losing the town's charm. "We don't want to become just another stop on the map," said Mrs. Peterson, the diner owner. "Maplewood's special because it's ours. If too many people come sniffing around, we might lose that." "I hear you," Ethan replied, stirring sugar into his coat. A bustling town square in winter, filled with people celebrating under strings of festive lights. In the background stands a glowing energy generator, its soft blue light illuminating the snow-covered ground. A man and a woman stand on a small stage, smiling as they address the crowd gathered below. The townspeople cheer, holding mugs of hot cocoa and signs that read, "Thank you, Maplewood Heroes." The atmosphere is joyful and hopeful, with children laughing and snowflakes drifting gently from the sky. Months had passed since the first energy generator was installed in Maplewood, and the town was thriving in ways no one could have imagined. The once struggling community now buzzed with activity. New businesses opened their doors, families who had considered moving away decided to stay, and even the coldest nights felt warmer thanks to the steady supply of affordable, renewable energy. Ethan Carter and Lily Harper had become local legends, their names spoken with gratitude and admiration wherever people gathered. To celebrate the success of the project, the town organized a special event in the square, a festival to honor the partnership that had transformed Maplewood. On the evening of the celebration, the square was alive with music, laughter, and the smell of roasted chestnuts wafting through the crisp air. Strings of colorful lights hung between lampposts, casting a warm glow over the snow-covered scene. Children darted between stalls selling handmade crafts and treats, while adults mingled, sharing stories of how life had improved since the arrival of the new technology. Ethan stood near the edge of the crowd, feeling both proud and overwhelmed. He wasn't used to being the center of attention, but tonight it seemed like everyone wanted to thank him personally. As he accepted hugs and handshakes from neighbors, he couldn't help but glance toward the stage where Lily stood, talking with the mayor. She looked radiant, her smile lighting up the entire square. Despite her wealth and fame, she blended seamlessly into the festivities, chatting warmly with residents and posing for photos without hesitation. When it was time for speeches, Ethan joined Lily on the small wooden stage set up in front of the energy generator. The crowd quieted as the mayor stepped forward to introduce them. Tonight we celebrate not just a groundbreaking achievement, but the spirit of cooperation that made it possible, he said, his voice booming over the speakers. Thanks to Ethan Carter and Lily Harper, Maplewood has become a beacon of hope, not just for our town, but for communities everywhere. The audience erupted into applause, and Ethan felt heat rise to his cheeks. When it was his turn to speak, he took a deep breath and stepped up to the microphone. For a moment, he simply looked out at the sea of familiar faces, friends, neighbors, and strangers alike, all united by the shared joy of what they'd accomplished together. I'm not much of a speechmaker, Ethan began, earning chuckles from the crowd. But I do know this. None of this would have happened without trust. Trust in each other, trust in new ideas, and trust that doing the right thing can make a real difference. He paused, glancing at Lily beside him. Lily came into my life, unexpectedly, and she showed me that kindness and innovation go hand in hand. Together, we proved that even the smallest towns can dream big and achieve those dreams if we work together. As the crowd cheered again, Lily stepped up to the microphone, her expression thoughtful. When I came to Maplewood, I was looking for inspiration, she said, her voice clear and steady. What I found was so much more, a reminder of why I started this journey in the first place. It's easy to get lost in numbers and plans, but the heart of progress is people. And the people of Maplewood have shown me that when we come together, anything is possible. Her words resonated deeply, drawing yet another round of applause. After the speeches, the celebration continued late into the night. Ethan and Lily wandered through the square, stopping to chat with friends and strangers alike. At one point, Ethan noticed a group of kids playing near the energy generator, their faces lit with wonder as they marveled at the glowing device. Hard to believe something so simple could change so much, Ethan remarked, watching them laugh. It's not the machine that changed things, Lily replied softly. It's the people who believed in it, and in each other. Ethan nodded, feeling a surge of pride. Over the past few months, he had grown in ways he never expected. Helping Lily bring her vision to life had pushed him out of his comfort zone, teaching him to embrace challenges and opportunities he might otherwise have avoided. He realized now that his role wasn't just about fixing cars or solving problems. It was about connecting with others and creating a better future for everyone. The time the festival wound down, Ethan felt a deep sense of fulfillment. As he and Lily walked back to his apartment above the garage, the streets were quiet except for the crunch of snow beneath their boots. They stopped for a moment outside the building, looking up at the stars twinkling above. You know, Lily said, breaking the silence, I didn't expect any of this when I got stranded in that storm. Neither did I, Ethan admitted with a grin. Guess sometimes life throws you a curveball and it turns out to be exactly what you needed. Lily laughed, her breath visible in the cold night air. Well, whatever happens next, I'm glad we're figuring it out together. Ethan smiled, knowing she meant it. Their unlikely friendship had sparked a chain reaction that touched countless lives, including their own. As they headed inside, Ethan couldn't help but feel optimistic about the future. Maplewood had been given a second chance, and so had he. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he knew they would face them side by side, guided by the same values that brought them together in the first place: kindness, trust, and the belief that even the smallest actions could lead to extraordinary outcomes. A serene winter morning in a small town, with golden sunlight breaking through the trees and casting long shadows on the snow-covered ground. A man carries tools to his garage while a sleek black car drives away in the distance. In the background, a glowing energy generator stands proudly near the town square, its soft blue light blending with the warm hues of dawn. The scene feels peaceful, yet full of promise, symbolizing new beginnings and lasting connections. As the seasons changed, so did Maplewood. Spring brought melting snow and budding flowers, turning the once frozen town into a vibrant hub of activity. The energy generator continued to hum quietly in the square, its presence now as natural as the lampposts and benches that surrounded it. For Ethan Carter, life had settled into a rhythm that was both familiar and transformed. He still spent his days fixing cars at the garage, but his role in the community had grown far beyond that of a mechanic. People looked to him not just for repairs, but for guidance, inspiration, and leadership. Lily Harper, too, had left her mark on the town and on Ethan's life. After months of working together, she eventually returned to her world of boardrooms and global projects, but she didn't leave Maplewood behind. Instead, she stayed connected, checking in regularly and ensuring that the town remained a shining example of sustainable innovation. She often sent updates about how other communities were adopting similar technologies, inspired by what had been achieved in this quiet corner of the country. Ethan missed her company more than he expected. Their late-night conversations by the fire, their shared laughter during the festival, and even their disagreements over logistics had become cherished memories. But he understood that Lily's work took her to places where she was needed most. And though they lived vastly different lives, their bond remained strong, a testament to the power of trust and mutual respect. One crisp spring morning, Ethan received an email from Lily. It was short but meaningful. "Ethan, I wanted to thank you again for everything. Maplewood reminded me why I started this journey, to make a difference no matter how small. You've inspired me in ways I'll carry with me forever. Keep dreaming big, my friend. The world needs more people like you. Take care, Lily." Reading her words, Ethan felt a warmth spread through him. He saved the email and tucked his phone into his pocket, stepping outside to greet the day. As he walked toward the garage, he noticed something unusual, a package waiting on the doorstep. Curious, he picked it up and opened it carefully. Inside was a framed photo of the two of them standing beside the energy generator on the night of the festival. They were smiling, surrounded by cheering townspeople. Beneath the photo was an inscription, "To Ethan, proof that one act of kindness can change the world." Ethan stared at the gift for a long moment, feeling a lump rise in his throat. It wasn't just a picture. It was a reminder of how far they'd come together, and how much farther they could go individually. Inspired, he decided to take action. Over the next few weeks, he reached out to neighboring towns, sharing Maplewood's story and offering advice on implementing renewable energy solutions. Though he wasn't a scientist or an engineer, he knew firsthand the impact these changes could have on struggling communities. His practical insights and genuine passion made him a trusted voice, and soon, invitations poured in for him to speak at conferences and workshops. At first, Ethan hesitated. Public speaking wasn't his strength, and he worried about leaving Maplewood for extended periods. But with encouragement from Lily and his friends, he realized that stepping outside his comfort zone could amplify the good they had started. Each trip gave him new perspective,